This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A Winnipeg man says his mother was left on a stretcher in the emergency room hallway for 8 days, waiting to be transferred to another healthcare facility. He calls that unacceptable and is speaking out in hopes it doesn't happen to others. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has more.
For a week and a half, Alan Gorlick and Heather Denbour have been fighting to get his mom care. Instead, they've slowly been watching the 89-year-old deteriorate inside the emergency room at the Grace Hospital.
It's really sad to see them waiting for that long in curtain areas with no privacy and the noise and the sound. It's very upsetting for them.
Denbour's mother-in-law had a fall at her home last week. By the next day, she couldn't stand up. Helen was rushed to hospital, triaged, admitted, and left waiting.
The wait time was 18 hours until she saw a doctor that night.
But that was just the start. She spent the next 8 days on a stretcher in the emergency room. No privacy, unable to stand and bear any weight or use the washroom on her own.
She's lost a lot of her strength. She's lost a little bit of her spirit.
While Helen has no broken bones, she needs rehab treatment to help regain her mobility. It took until Wednesday afternoon for a bed to open up at Misericordia.
You see your mother-in-law, who you've known for almost 40 years, kind of slumped down and looking like that. You know that it's draining for them.
The family says at least 7 other seniors were in the same position.
You could see that the halls of the ER were lined with a lot of elderly patients, makeshift beds in the halls, and the staff basically you could see them being overworked.
Uzoma Asagwara, the NDP health minister, calls the situation troubling and concerning.
It's unacceptable, quite frankly. And I know that healthcare workers are doing their absolute best to provide the care that they know Manitobans deserve. But obviously the conditions are incredibly challenging.
They are working to improve the system and wait times, but it takes time, and they're asking for patience. For Gorlick's family, changes can't come soon enough.
These people can't languish in hallways waiting for some place to go while they're hopefully trying to get home again.
Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A report by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority has just been made public. It's an independent review of a palliative home care following the death of a Winnipeg woman who didn't get the services she was promised. CBC's Emily Brass explains.
The report found there were significant delays in delivering home care for a palliative patient in Winnipeg. Her name was redacted, but we know from her husband that they're talking about 62-year-old Catherine Ellis. She died in February from cancer. Ellis had opted for palliative care at home, but that support didn't arrive until 3 days after her death. That's when a nurse finally showed up, unaware she'd already died. During the 5 weeks Ellis was at home, her husband had to care for her on his own. That meant her hygiene suffered and her sheets couldn't be changed. Eric DeShepper filed a complaint with the Manitoba Ombudsman and spoke to media, including CBC. That's what led to this report. It found gaps and breakdowns in communication and procedure. The report makes 21 recommendations on improving workflows. At the top of the list is making sure palliative patients are given the highest priority. Ellis had been listed as a priority 3 patient when she should have been priority 1. The WRHA says it's already making some of the changes, like moving more systems online instead of relying so much on paperwork and phone calls.
As home care staff, we come to work every day and want to do the right thing every day for our clients and their family members. And sometimes it's hard to see, when we make errors like this that significantly impact people's lives. So I welcome the recommendations.
The report also acknowledges serious staffing shortages that can leave workers overwhelmed, something their union has said for years.
The cost of living has gone up so much and your pay is low. Then you're also paying for mileage to drive your cars to and from people's homes. That takes a lot of their salaries, and some of them just can't afford to stay in the job.
Meanwhile, Ellis's husband says this has all taken a toll on him, but he says he's glad his wife's experience wasn't in vain, since it looks like speaking out is leading to some changes. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Calls for a search of the Prairie Green landfill now have the support of Winnipeg City Council. A motion calling for the other two levels of government to fund the search passed at City Hall today. But as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the vote was not unanimous.
The motion passed with 9 councillors voting in favour and 6 in opposition, including Mayor Scott Gillingham. Winnipeg police believe Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are the victims of a serial killer. Their investigation concluded their remains were dumped in the landfill north of the city. A feasibility study released earlier this year said the search could take up to 3 years and cost up to $184 million. Gillingham says he doesn't think it's appropriate for the city to tell other governments to do something outside its jurisdiction.
I've met with 2 premiers on this matter. I've met with 2 federal ministers of Crown and Indigenous Relations on this matter, imploring all of them to take next steps to work with the families.
Councillor Cindy Gilroy brought forward the original motion in July. After months of debate at City Council, Executive Policy Committee voted last week to take no action on it. But today, Gilroy brought the motion back.
I really just want this to be a united stance on sending a clear message that we're standing with women that are in our community that are really suffering.
Sandra Delaront of the city's MMIWG Implementation Committee spoke before the vote. She urged the councillors to approve the call for a search.
They called Winnipeg home for most, if not all, of their days. The city of Winnipeg has an obligation to them and to, as it does for all of its citizens.
Gillingham has said previously that the city will do what it can to support a search if the province and feds move ahead. Earlier this month, the federal government announced more money to further review a possible search. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's new premier met with the families of the 2 murdered women today, as well as leadership from their home community. At that meeting, the premier apologized for how the decision to not search the landfill for their missing loved ones had been made into an election issue. Long Plain First Nation Chief Kyra Wilson said meeting with Wab Canoe left the families feeling more optimistic about the path forward.
Being able to sit in a circle compared to previous meetings where we're sitting across the table from one another, it's a very different energy, different, I guess, it's just a different dynamic. You just see it, you can feel it. It's a beautiful working relationship.
The leaders who spoke after the meeting said they remain focused on providing more details on the scope of a search. The federal government imposed a 90-day deadline to gather additional details attached to $740,000 in funding. The Winnipeg Jets set a record this week, but it wasn't a record they wanted. Just over 11,000 fans attended Tuesday's home game against the St. Louis Blues. That's the lowest attendance since the NHL returned to Winnipeg back in 2011, not counting the pandemic. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports now on the Jets' ongoing attendance woes.
The fans are still cheering for the Winnipeg Jets at Canada Life Centre, but there are fewer of them. Through 4 home games this season, the Jets are averaging 11,823 fans in the stands. That works out to a 23% vacancy rate in Canada Life Centre, which seats 15,321 fans for hockey. The only NHL team with fewer paying fans than the Jets is the Arizona Coyotes, who play in the 4,600-seat Mullet Arena. As recently as 5 years ago, the Jets sold out every game. Empty seats started showing up in 2019, and then came the pandemic, depriving some fans of income and making others realize there may be better things to spend their money on.
For my family to go to a hockey game of 5, I'm looking at $500 to $600 for the night. It's not cheap anymore.
Sean Murfitt had season tickets to the Jets since 2011 when the NHL came back to Winnipeg, but gave them up this season.
When beer is $14 and a piece of pizza is $12 and a hot dog's $10, parking is $20, it adds up pretty fast for a family.
Murfitt may still go to the occasional game. There's an average of 3,500 available seats on any given night. That has some fans wondering about the viability of NHL hockey in Winnipeg, especially when the league commissioner said this in 2011.
be candid, this isn't going to work very well unless this building is sold out every night.
In an interview with TSN, the chair of True North Sports and Entertainment tried to reassure fans. Mark Chipman said the team is staying in Winnipeg, but he still needs to sell more tickets. Sean Murphy says that'll take some effort on the part of True North.
I think they got to start listening to the fans.
CBC News reached out to True North Sports and Entertainment for comment, but right now, Mark Chipman's only doing interviews with media outlets that broadcast Jets games. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A name familiar to many Manitobans is running to become the next National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Sheila North made the announcement this morning. North, who is from Bunabonabee Cree Nation, is a former CBC broadcaster and former Grand Chief of Manitoba Kiiwetinowi Okimakanak, the Northern Chiefs organization. North says she's been encouraged by chiefs from across the country to enter the race. The position opened up this summer when Roseanne Archibald was ousted. North ran to be AFN's national chief 5 years ago. She says she's grown since then.
I think that I am ready to lead our organization, but most of all, lead with the chiefs across Canada. I think it's time to take AFN, the Assembly of First Nations, back to the chiefs of Canada.
North is currently working with the International Commission on Missing Persons. She says if elected as AFN's national chief, she would like to continue working with that group because of the important work it does. The family of the man found not criminally responsible for killing his parents is now suing health officials. Trevor Farley's siblings filed a lawsuit Tuesday with the Manitoba Court of King's Bench. They allege the Mental Health Crisis Response Center in Winnipeg failed to properly care for their brother when he went there looking for help a day before the killings. The suit names the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, Winnipeg Churchill Health Region, and Shared Health as defendants. The lawsuit alleges in part Farley was not transferred to a locked inpatient facility in a timely fashion. Farley checked himself into the Crisis Response Center 2 years ago, but then walked out the next morning, drove to his parents' homes, and killed them. He was found not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder last week and designated a high-risk accused. The allegations in this lawsuit have not been tested in court. Meteorologist John Sauter joins us today with snow on the radar.
Yeah, more snow this morning. Woke up, the grassy areas were a little white. That is melted here in Winnipeg. A lot less melting going on south of here, but yeah, there's more. And here it is on radar. It's coming up from the southwest once again. So we've had some snow along the international border, southeastern Manitoba as well, and even some rain. Now, if we look at this 3-hour loop here, you can see in the early part of the loop in the southeast corner of the province, we've got a little bit of blue as opposed to gray and white, and you can see that just around the Roseau, Minnesota area. That is rain, and that's what's heading up into the Fort Frances area for tonight. It'll turn to snow overnight and tomorrow. All of this is heading up into the southeast and will likely move up into the Winnipeg area as well. Have a look what's upstream of us here. And all of this snow here is moving up into Manitoba. 5 to 10 centimeters, I think, by the time we get to this time tomorrow. That's for Winnipeg. Amounts along the international border will be higher. So snowfall warning here. A special weather statement around the Kenora area because amounts aren't quite that high for a warning. And then in southeastern Manitoba, we've got this snowfall warning. Doesn't include the city of Winnipeg, but pretty much right from the perimeter east and south and right along the international borders where we could see that 10 to 20 centimeters, more like 5 to 10 around the Winnipeg area. I think it's 5 tonight, and then maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and then further flurries after that as we move through the rest of the day. Kind of hovering around 2 degrees today. That was my forecast high. North winds at 28 kilometers per hour. This is what Futurecast looks like. I'll put a stop in here at about 2 in the morning, and you can see it'll be like last night, only I think a little more intense, especially along the international border. North Dakota, Minnesota, we're picking up some snow in northwestern Ontario, and you can really see the rain-snow line here and where it's raining. It is raining pretty hard in the middle of the night. And then tomorrow morning, everything's moving out of southwestern Manitoba. We'll still see some snow here in the Red River Valley and southeast, and it all just turns into occasional flurries, maybe even some lake-effect squalls around Gimli, around Portage-la Prairie, and anywhere in the Interlake, really. As we get into Saturday, the winds are shifting a little more to the southwest, so the squalls will change, and it's more of a sun-cloud mix for most of us on Saturday and on Sunday. Projected snowfall between now and tomorrow morning. Well, this latest run of the model has Winnipeg at 10. I think it'll be more like 5 or 6. And again, remember, a lot of this is melting on contact as it hits the still relatively warm ground. And then we get to 6 o'clock this time tomorrow, and the amounts are picking up a little bit, maybe a total of 12 in Winnipeg. So I'm still saying about 5 to 10. -2 tonight, 5 centimeters overnight, another 2 or 3 in the morning, followed by further flurries, occasional flurries, a high of 0, north winds a little on the brisk side, 25 to 40, and then in the long range we dry out on the weekend, but it is cool. More periods of light snow on Monday, and soon, Janet, I'll be back to show you what Halloween is going to look like.
Excellent. Thanks, John.
Okay.
They call them Backpacks from Heaven. In fact, that's the name behind a group that ensures vulnerable people in the community get supplies that'll help them survive. Every year, the parents and friends of people who've lost their lives to overdose get together and fill up backpacks. Yesterday, they handed these backpacks out to people in need outside the Salvation Army shelter in Winnipeg. CBC's Jim Agapito was there.
Thank you for coming out, you guys. I appreciate the volunteers, the supporters, and everybody that's going to help pack these backpacks. We're well appointed this year. We're going to make a lot of people happy. Thanks again.
Especially the parents. This is the 4th annual Backpacks from Heaven, organized by a near and dear friend of mine who lost his son a couple of years ago.
And 2 of these guys.
What we have is a room full of parents and family members of people who have died in terms of overdose and tainted drug supply, that kind of thing.
2 of this one. That's the only one you take 2 of right here.
So to honor those folks that have passed on, their families want to do something to give back.
All right, a sleeping bag.
In 2019, my son lost his girlfriend to an overdose. And he started this with his girlfriend's mom in 2020, giving away to the homeless people. And in 2021, my son passed away. Similar circumstances, he succumbed to his struggles and decided to carry on.
Willie, you got support.
It lifts their spirits. When you go on Wednesday when we're doing the giveaway and see the joy on the faces of the recipients,
Did you get your hat?
It's like Christmas to them.
Is everybody ready? Thank goodness it didn't snow. Yay!
Here you go.
Okay.
Enjoy.
People need a lot of support because it's getting cold, and I've seen so many people living in tents and all that, and they need warm stuff like clothing and a hot meal for them to eat every day, because it's like some people don't even wear no shoes or jackets. They walk around with no nothing, and it's really like, well, the winter's coming pretty soon.
I love you.
I love you too.
I love you so much. My heart, first of all, goes to the recipients. They struggle, they're beautiful, they're awesome, and if this helps them feel better so that they reach out for that help, we'll be there for them.
There's Subway sub and hot chocolate. Thank you, guys.
Secondly, my heart goes out to the actual families that are doing this.
Hello. There you go.
Their son and their daughter died, and they put all their grief and all their energy into doing this. Well, backpacks are all gone. If you got a backpack, let these people who didn't get a backpack get food. Yeah. Well, it's hard when we run out, because there's still people left in the line. The good thing is we do this 3 times a week on Main Street. And I know these folks. I have a relationship with these folks, and I will look after them. They will get taken care of.
15 minutes, 104 backpacks, phenomenal. And we could have used probably 25 more, at least 25 more. But you can see these people are pretty happy to receive all this stuff.
It's about healing. You know, you've lost a loved one. All the families here have lost loved ones helping. What does it mean to know that they've had, been able to help just that quick? It's going to help someone for the winter.
I'm looking down on it and saying, good job. It's fantastic.
Message for Manitobans, a message for Canadians, a message for Winnipegger. What do you want them to remember when people do things like this and why it's important?
Be kind, give love. Simple.
Oh, that's an important message, hey? Be kind, give love. Coming up, the war between Israel and Hamas approaching 3 weeks now. More than 200 airstrikes hitting Gaza in 24 hours. A nightmare for civilians, no end in sight. The latest after the break. Israel has conducted another land foray into Gaza, its largest of the campaign yet. It confirms more airstrikes, more than 200 in 24 hours. This crisis is approaching 3 weeks, a 3-week nightmare for civilians caught in the middle and one with no end in sight. The CBC's Susan Ormiston has this report.
Gaza bombarded again for a 20th straight day. People exhausted, wondering whether they'll survive to the next day.
I can't, like, when I hear the shelling, especially between like 12 and 3 a.m., which is usually a heavy period, it just kind of imagine, okay, if it's gonna hit here or there, what's gonna be the impact, you know? It's scary.
Naila Shawa sleeps in a car because there's no room in the house she shares with her family and 55 others.
And there is like no hope for anything. So it's hard to think about the future. If there will be anything, it won't be going back.
Airstrikes have killed over 7,000 people, according to the Hamas-run health authority. Last night, Hamas sent a missive back. A barrage of rockets slammed into an apartment block in central Israel, close to Tel Aviv. The Iron Dome did not intercept. Daniel Tetsabi got his wife and 7-year-old to safety, but his apartment was badly damaged. He's convinced there's only one option: to try to put an end to the threat. There's no choice. If they can reach Rishon in the center in Tel Aviv, there's no chance. We must take care of it. Hamas is a terror organization, he said. Attacks like these put more pressure on the Israeli government to move into Gaza with a ground incursion. That's what many of these residents expect. Last night, tanks and troops did go in a targeted raid. At least 12 tanks and troops pushed into Gaza overnight, pounding through the boundary fence. The Israeli military says it attacked anti-tank positions, tunnel shafts, and command posts, and declared more raids like this one will come. Hamas is threatening with more rockets, too. The sirens ringing out again in the same spot near Tel Aviv today, sending people running for shelter. Us, too. This time, the rockets were intercepted in the sky above. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Rishon LeZion, Israel.
Winnipeg police are pleading for peace during upcoming protests on the fighting that's happening in the Middle East. Last weekend, you may remember, Winnipeg police had to step between a group of pro-Palestinian protesters and a group of pro-Israeli protesters. They're calling on both sides now not to hold any more simultaneous counter-protests. Officers say people can, of course, hold peaceful, lawful demonstrations, but they're asking those with differing views to gather at a different time and a different location.
This trend is very concerning given the volatile nature of crowds. So we're asking for everybody's cooperation to contribute to peace in our community.
Officers say they are already investigating at least 11 suspected hate-related incidents in Winnipeg. In one case, early this past Sunday morning, in the front window of a River Heights home was shot out. Investigators say the owners had a religious symbol that was visible near their front door. A massive search is underway in the northeast United States for an armed suspect after last night's mass shootings in Maine. Residents of Lewiston, Maine, and normally a very quiet place, have told themselves, and they've been told, to lock themselves in, to stay indoors. At least 18 people were killed. 13 others were wounded during the attack. Alison Northcott reports from a city that remains shaken by this violence.
Amid a tense and terrifying time for residents in Lewiston, Governor Janet Mills announced a somber tally of the dead and injured.
This city did not deserve this terrible assault on its citizens, on its peace of mind, on its sense of security.
Suffolk County got multiple victims. I need multiple victims. I need every unit you can find.
Police scanners Wednesday evening after the shootings began. The victims were gunned down in a restaurant, others in a bowling alley.
Out of nowhere, he just came in and there was a loud pop. I just booked it down the lane and I slid basically into where the pins are and climbed up in the machine.
We started hearing sirens just like all night long, crazy stuff. And then we looked it up and it was just a massacre and it was really sad.
The gunman fled, prompting a massive manhunt. Residents here and in surrounding areas told to shelter in place.
This suspect is still at large.
Officials say the suspect, 40-year-old Robert Card of Bowden, Maine, should be considered armed and dangerous.
We also have an incredibly strong laser-like focus on bringing this suspect into custody and ultimately to justice.
Card is a U.S. Army reservist. The New York Army National Guard said there was an incident in the summer when he acted erratically at a training site, which led to a medical evaluation. As more victims were identified, some family members waited in anguish for answers.
When you get anything that happens like this, you go empty. And there's just nothing you can do.
At the Canadian border with Maine, which touches New Brunswick and Quebec, Canada Border Services Agency says all points of entry remain open, but it issued an armed and dangerous firearms lookout, alerting officers of this high-risk person and situation. Maine's governor says she and U.S. President Joe Biden have ordered all U.S. and state flags to be lowered to half-staff to honor those who are injured and remember those who died. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Lewiston, Maine.
Former fashion mogul Peter Nygard testified for the second day at his sexual assault trial in Toronto today. The 82-year-old has pleaded not guilty to 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of forcible confinement. Answering questions posed by his own lawyers, Nygard once again denied allegations against him. Jamie Strachan has the details, and we have to warn you, some details are disturbing.
Peter Nygard testified today that he does not know and has never met 4 of the 5 women who alleged the one-time fashion mogul sexually assaulted them. Nygard testified about an 11-hour interview he gave to Toronto police in October of 2021. During the interview, he was shown 4 pictures of his 4 accusers at the time and told their names. He testified that he told police he had never seen or heard of them. Nygard's lawyer Brian Greenspan then walked him through the details surrounding each allegation. The first complainant alleged that in March of 1988, Nygard tackled her onto the bed at his Toronto headquarters, ripped open her blouse and put his hand up her skirt. He told the court he would never have done it and that he would never have done those types of acts. Over the last 3 weeks, court has heard testimony from 5 women who have detailed sordid, disturbing allegations against Nygard. All of the alleged assaults took place between the late 80s and 2005. The youngest alleged victim was 16 at the time. Some of the women told similar stories of meeting Nygard by chance before being offered a tour of his Toronto headquarters. The women testified their meetings ended with them being allegedly raped in Nygard's bedroom at his Toronto headquarters. Nygard denied any scenario where he would meet somebody by chance and then offer them a tour. Before he faced criminal charges, Nygard helmed a sprawling fashion empire for decades. The company declared bankruptcy in 2020 as allegations against Nygard began to swirl. Nygard is expected to be on the stand until at least the end of the week. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
The Prime Minister says he's going to pause the federal carbon tax on home heating oil. That pause will cover rural areas where it applies now and will be in effect for the next 3 years. Justin Trudeau says his government wants to make it easier for people to switch to electric heat pumps, and they'll bring in new incentives to do so. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
Just a couple of hours before the Prime Minister's announcement he was changing the carbon tax plan, his Environment Minister was in the House defending it.
It's basic math. If it costs more to grow food, it will cost more to buy food. After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost.
Setting aside for a second the la-la land math that the Conservative Party is using on this issue.
But for months, Justin Trudeau's Atlantic caucus has been making its own calculations about what a lack of adjustment on the carbon tax may cost the Liberals.
I think they will lose seats, not just in Newfoundland, not just in Atlantic Canada, but indeed right across the country, if they don't get a grasp on this.
And today, the Prime Minister made it clear those numbers were on his mind.
Many people in Atlantic Canada and in rural communities across the country rely on home heating oil.
On home heating oil, rural Canadians will get a 3-year reprieve from the impact of the carbon tax and double the rebate on the tax for gasoline from 10 to 20%. The government is also expanding the definition of who qualifies as a rural Canadian and providing more incentives to switch to heat pumps across the country.
This is an important moment where we're adjusting policies so that they have the right outcome. We are supporting Canadians while we fight climate change.
Home heating bills are up.
The shift also comes after an anti-carbon tax campaign led by Conservative leader Pierre Palliative that has helped boost his standing in the polls.
Home heating bills have doubled. Seniors wonder how they're going to keep the heat on because this tax is going to be tripled, and tripled.
A sentiment echoed by the progressive Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia.
Life just got a lot less affordable for Nova Scotians.
Trudeau was flanked by his Atlantic Caucus MPs when making the announcement. It's meant to placate their concerns, but there's no telling how Liberal MPs pushing his environmental agenda may react. Rafi Bujikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Prime Minister's also announced his choice for the vacancy on the Supreme Court, and it means that for the first time there will be more women justices than men. The Prime Minister's nominated Mary Moreau, a Francophone justice who has been serving as a judge in Alberta for almost 30 years. Before becoming a judge, she was a lawyer whose practice included constitutional and criminal law cases. Moreau is from Edmonton. She's also served on the Supreme Court of Yukon and the Northwest Territories. She replaces Judge Russell Brown, who resigned in June following a claim of misconduct at a U.S. resort, a claim he denies. The dangers of distracted driving don't go away, even when you're in a self-driving car. We'll have more on that after the break. You're watching CBC. A study in Windsor, Ontario highlights the potential risks of self-driving cars in the hands of distracted drivers. It found that those using semi-autonomous mode in a Tesla appeared to pay less attention to the road, which I'm not surprised about. That's when compared to driving in manual mode. Dale Molnar takes a closer look at the findings.
You know, we've been promised for many, many years that these cars would be much safer than human drivers, but so far the evidence is not showing that.
Francesco Biondi is a kinesiology professor at the University of Windsor. About this time last year, he got 30 volunteers to drive a 2022 Tesla Model S to Chatham and back on the 401. Headgear recorded eye movements, they wore heart monitors, and other technology was used to track how well they paid attention to the road.
They started paying less attention to the road, more attention to the massive touchscreen, and they started looking, elsewhere, on not at the forward roadway, but side glances, looking at the sides for much longer than they did when driving manually. We had a number of cases where the driver was dozing off.
Biondi says a research assistant told the drivers not to text while driving, but he says given the findings, he wonders how many drivers are doing that. When in this semi-autonomous mode, the drivers are supposed to keep their hands on the wheel. This Tesla owner says he is a safe driver and is upset to hear about the results.
I'm appalled. I'm appalled that people are using the vehicle for that reason. If they are, it's like a missile then on the road. And it's, we have children, we have elderly, we have people on the road that we need to keep safe.
His model of Tesla has features that alert drivers that aren't paying attention. Matt Johnson of Invest Windsor Essex says that is important to keeping the drivers safe.
So there could be vibrations within the seats or within the steering wheels themselves. There could be full modes where the vehicle can just pull over to the side of the road until that individual's been rested well enough to get back onto the road itself.
But the executive director of the Automotive Centre of Excellence at Ontario Tech University says the study shows engineers need to take into account the human factor when producing more advanced autonomous vehicles.
I think what it does is highlight that as we move our technology forth, we have to look at any AI advancement and how the human fits into these advancements so that we progress, because the ultimate goal, of course, is higher safety.
Among his recommendations, Biondi says the Canadian government needs to direct automakers to better record incidents of crashes with the vehicles. Biondi says the Canadian government should do more testing like this, especially with older drivers and on longer trips. He also says that driver training should now include protocols on how to drive safely with semi-autonomous vehicles. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Well, once upon a time, semi-autonomous vehicles would have been something you'd see at a futuristic vehicle show like the one we're about to show you. Media just got a display, a chance to see this big new auto show in Tokyo. Hundreds of car makers there gathered to show off their concepts and designs. This drone, you can pilot from inside. Flying might not be everyone's idea of a daily commute, so if you live near water, maybe you want one of these things. Company says that drone glides over the water. The Japan Mobility Show, as it's called, will be open to the general public starting this weekend, but we got a sneak peek. Now, this time last night, John and I were telling you about Hurricane Otis and how it had slammed into the Pacific coast of Mexico as a Category 5 hurricane. Well, we now know that at least 27 people were killed in the Acapulco area alone, and more are missing.
Yeah, have a look at these images. Officials have been having a hard time getting a full picture of the damage because communication is mostly down. Many roads are blocked, and at last word, the power was still out. People are not well prepared for this storm. Otis strengthened from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 24 hours. The Mexican government has deployed roughly 8,000 members of the military and National Guard to help clear debris and repair infrastructure. Those images are absolutely outstanding. They're just unbelievable. What the winds, they say, in the storm were about 265 kilometers per hour. And those were the sustained winds with gusts in the hurricane on top of that. All right, these are our current temperatures. 1s and 2s across the Winnipeg region, northern Red River Valley down to the south. We're still at 1. Much cooler out to the west. Brandon -3, Melita -5, and it's -2 in Dauphin, and still around that 0 to 1 mark over into northwestern Ontario. If you work through your way into Saskatchewan, temperature more like -8 to -10 today. I think Regina got up to about a -6, and that was it. These are the northern temperatures, -2s and 3s up the western edge of the province, as is in Thompson, Churchill, and Gillam. And boy, a lot of cloud around in the prairies right now, and a lot of this cloud is carrying snow with it to the tune of about 5 to 10 centimeters as the system works its way into Kenora, Fort Frances. I think in Fort Frances it may start as a bit of a rain and then changing over to snow. A little bit less up around Red Lake, 5 centimeters on the way tonight. Here in the southeast, 5 to 10 farther south. Now, by about noon or even in the afternoon tomorrow, we could see these amounts in the south being closer to 20 centimeters. I think in Winnipeg, 5 centimeters tonight, another 2 to 3 tomorrow morning, and then just occasional flurries through the rest of the day. 5 centimeters tonight around Brandon. Not so much around Dauphin, Swan River, just cloudy skies and lows around -5 in Dauphin, -7 in Swan River. And we've got that 5 to 10 through Morden and Winkler as well. As we head to the north, we're looking at a few flurries up around Lynn Lake, but that is about it. It's a pretty dry forecast, pretty seasonal forecast. Temperatures are close to seasonal. And then tomorrow, 0s to +1s, a few -1s farther north, but a fair bit of sunshine through northern Manitoba, a bit of cloud around the Paw over in Norway House. We've got cloud in the west tomorrow, but not much in the way of snow. We'll see morning snow squalls closer to the lakes around Portage, also around Gimli, Ashern. Anywhere in that Interlake region, you could see flurries or snow squalls. 2 to 3 centimeters, Winnipeg, Emerson, Steinbach, Sprague, 2 to 3 additional centimeters tomorrow. Same with Pinawa, the Whiteshell area, and then off into northwestern Ontario. Generally 5 more centimeters. Could see amounts as high as 10 more in the Dryden area.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Coming up after the break, we examine the art of scaring people. CBC's Chloe Friesen takes us on a frightening new adventure. We'll explain after the break. Ask anyone who works at a spooky Halloween attraction and they'll tell you that being frightening is an art. For Dryden Dilts, scaring people puts a little extra dough in his pocket, at least for the month of October. He's been working at a Maze in Corn's haunted forest near St. Adolphe for almost a decade now. Dilts attempted to teach CBC's Chloe Friesen how to petrify the public.
It's a seasonal gig that attracts thespians and horror lovers alike. Scare acting. You know those people making you shriek in haunted houses? Well, they get paid to scare you. I'm here at Maze in Corn in St. Adolphe to meet Dryden Dilts. He's a scare actor who works in their haunted forest. He's going to teach me the ropes. Let's go. So Dryden, when did you first get into scare acting?
You know, it was about 8 years ago. I was fresh out of high school and I was looking for something creative. I did a lot of improv in high school and a seasonal job on the weekends. Yeah.
What do you love about it?
Honestly, almost every aspect. Interacting with people, getting the creativity that you get to do. You create a character every single night, you inhabit that, and you get to scare people, which is I mean, for me, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I don't know what that says about me.
How do you gauge a good scare? Is there like a certain pitch of a scream? Is there like just how high someone jumps? What determines a good scare for you?
Yeah, higher the better, higher, both in voice, both in jump. If you can find someone, and you can often hear them saying, oh, I'm not scared, you can get that person to freak out, that's the most satisfying feeling. In my opinion, there's kind of two different roles you can play in the forest. You can be someone that is just purely scary. Your job is to make people scream. And then there's the entertainer, people that you get them going, you tell jokes, you just put them at ease, usually so that the first person can scare them. In either case, gauge your audience. Sometimes you let the bit go on too long, you can tell that someone's not going to be afraid and you still go for it, and it often doesn't work. Sometimes the nicest people, you have no idea what might be inside of you just waiting to jump out at people.
All right, Dryden, where do we start? I'm seeing a lot of cool costumes, a lot of different pieces.
So what you want to do is, in general, the idea is to cover everything. You don't want to see any human skin whatsoever, or everyday normal stuff. So
normal stuff isn't scary.
No, it's not. It takes people out of the illusion.
After we have costumes, we have our layers. What comes next?
So two things, you want to get something to cover the top.
Okay.
So a wig and or a hat.
Oh, luscious.
A weapon, or I mean a prop. We don't hurt people. And then it comes to the makeup.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay, Dryden, we look the part, but now I need to sound the part. I can't stop laughing when I look at myself. We were talking and you said I should lean into that. What do you mean?
Well, absolutely. I mean, some of the most terrifying creatures in history had like horrifying laughs, right? So what's your best kind of cackle? And you can also get a voice that complements it if you can do anything fun with your voice. Pick something you don't normally sound like. Avast!
I might go really breathy. I think I'll be able to sustain that.
Absolutely.
A little creepy and then a little ha ha ha.
Is that all right?
The contrast works because then you're like, you get close to them.
Yeah.
And then when they least expect it, you go.
See, even that makes me so scared. You're a pro. Okay, so should we head in? That wasn't bad.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for teaching me everything. I don't know if I'm cut out for this job, but you certainly are. So I'm gonna let you get to scaring.
Arr, we'll be seeing you.
Our always smiley Chloe Friesen. John Sauter's back with your 7-day forecast, and then we've got a daily lift to see if we can make you smile. So stay with us.
Well, certainly more snow on the way. The southern Red River Valley already seeing that. The southeast corner of the province seeing that. By this time tomorrow in Winnipeg, we may see another 10 centimeters, and then we dry out on the weekend. But it's cool. Look at these morning temperatures. Afternoons staying below zero. I don't see any chance for melting here before Halloween. Even some more snow on Monday, and an afternoon temperature on Halloween of -4. That means kids will be trick-or-treating at around a -6 or -7. And speaking of Halloween, for many people, the best part of Halloween is decorating with items that can be scary or silly.
There's really a range, you know? Yeah. Well, this could have folks divided. Here's your daily lift. Meet Taylor Swiftkin, a pumpkin painted to look like Taylor Swift when she went to the Grammy Awards this year. Taylor Swiftkin weighs about 181 kilograms. That's, 399 pounds.
That's 400. Not Taylor Swift, though.
No, that's Taylor Swiftkin.
Yes.
It took more than 9 wigs to make the hair on this giant pumpkin. Her ears, sweet potatoes, little football beside her, nod to her NFL boyfriend. The Ohio artist behind Taylor Swiftkin's a breast cancer survivor. Every year for the past 35 years, Jeanette Paris has painted a different celebrity pumpkin to raise money for research. Take a look at these, including 2015, then presidential candidate Donald Trumpkin, and baby Yodakin.
Yodakin.
In 2020.
That's amazing. She's so
well
talented.
Done. She is. Yeah. We gotta go. Yep. Thanks for being with us.
See you later.